right outside, so come on in, don't be shy. We've got ghosts and UFOs. Brace yourself, get ready for the show. Don't be afraid of the dark, the fun's about to start. Nightmares or tales will inspire. Oh, tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Have you heard tell of a demon next door? Or maybe a cryptid on the lake shore? There's nothing too strange for us here, so if you're ready, stamp out your fear. Don't be afraid of the dark, the fun's about to start. Nightmares or tales will inspire. Tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Whoa, whoa.
Welcome back, campers, to episode 53 of the Scaredy Campfires. Tonight's story takes us to the thin places, the spots where the world feels stretched, like reality forgot to close a door behind itself. Step carefully. Not everything that slips through wants to leave again. Tonight's first story comes from Reddit user who recounts a terrifying night deep in the backwoods of West Virginia, a place marked by drownings, tragic deaths, and long-forgotten graveyards. What began as a simple graduation camping trip quickly turned into a nightmare of unseen footsteps, whispered warnings, and a shadowed figure wearing a hat, one that may not have been as hostile as it first seemed. Obligatory. I know this sounds fantastical and wild, and I agree. This is in fairly remote backcountry West Virginia, which is known for being old and haunted. It was experienced entirely by two of us, but the worst parts by all four. This led to all four of us at some point battling personal issues in our lives that I believe stemmed directly from this encounter. The following is, at least to my memory, and what I've been able to corroborate with other people that were there, 100% accurate and true. When I was 17 in 2004, we had a bad experience camping near haunted train tunnels and sites of tragic deaths. History of immediate 1 square mile area. My mother and son drowning in the creek nearby. Old man hung himself from this old dead tree that hung over the water. Cliché, creepy, dead hanging tree, I know. Drug dealers killed in state police shootout at a nearby hunting cabin, and many years before, cheap laborers had been killed building this double set of train tunnels. They were actually buried in a long-forgotten little graveyard nearby, the tunnels that has since been found and restored. Story. We decided to go camping before graduation as a friend group of 4 just to do something one last time before all of us went our separate ways in life. This is a private property on the backside of a big forested hill around which the creek flows in a huge several-mile-long bend. Camp set up, fire going. Shortly after nightfall, my cousin and I sat on the creek bank, maybe 20 yards away from camp, spotlighting fish in the water. We began to hear a rhythmic slosh of what sounded like someone wading through the water, maybe halfway up there, shin deep. So we shined the light around upstream. We then spotted the symmetrically and rhythmically consistent disturbance made by what looked and sounded like invisible feet/legs sloshing towards us. When we would turn our spotlight off, it would start. It would start when illuminated. It was reacting to us, and this was the first ice bucket stomach clench moment. We knew this was not fish and could not rationalize what was happening. This scared us pretty badly, but we decided best to keep it to ourselves and joined the others gathered at the fire. As we made our way back, we heard the sloshing make it to where we were on the bank, and the noise stopped. Given the speed we witnessed it moving and how far it was from us when we were watching it, it must have sped up to make it to the bank we were on in the amount of time it took us to get back to the camp. Others at the camp heard it as well and figured we had either gotten in or somehow riled up some fish, but we just played it off. It sounded and looked like an invisible person wading towards us through the water. After the noise ended at the creek bank, we all saw the tall grass disturbed at something we couldn't see ran around the foliaged perimeter of our circularly cleared campsite. This could have been an animal, but it was fast. We then began to hear what sounded like a man talking to us, as in speaking into the ear of each person. The left ear, if that matters. At first, it sounded garbled, but after maybe 15 to 20 seconds, we could make out the words saying, "We shouldn't be there," and "we needed to leave," before finally addressing us directly and saying slightly more forcefully, "You need to leave." Obviously, this was terrifying, and at first we thought there was a person or group of people out there walking up on our camp, and that is dangerous. We were all frozen with fear, but then adrenaline hit. As we freaked out and started to run to our ATV, all four of us saw a tall black shadow man wearing what looked like a hat, relaxing against the front of our ATV. It straightened up when we saw it, and it saw us, and it just sort of hung there staring at us for a few seconds. No feet, the legs ended in sort of wavy lines, like looking above the fire at the heat waves. It stood out against the dark night behind it. The girl screamed, which broke our fear freeze, and it zipped like the flashback towards the train tunnels people had died in. Interestingly, when we went to start the ATV, it turned over sluggishly, as if the battery had been slightly drained, despite working fine not long before when we rode it down. This entire event happened over the course of maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and within an hour of the sun going down. After putting our story out there, I received a lot of feedback from people who have also had bad encounters in this area over many years. Even a guy I worked with, who I didn't know knew this area, told me that my uncle had hired him to trap in that area, and it was the only place he didn't check traps alone at night. He said it was almost like the animals leave the place at night. No less than a month later, my uncle, who owns the property, was up on the hill raccoon hunting at night with a dog. At some point, the dog was on a rock face up above him and knocked a large rock loose that fell and struck my uncle in the side of the neck. This understandably messed him up pretty bad and paralyzed almost his entire body, but he still had limited functionality on his left side. We could never figure out how he got himself back to his ATV and turned it around and drove himself out of there. It wasn't until probably 2 or 3 years later, around Halloween, when my story makes its rounds on the local Facebook groups, that my uncle texted my mother out of the blue. You have no reason to believe my uncle's character reference, but he is a salt of the earth, hunting, farming, working man, even working past his retirement as a millionaire. Honest, funny, just an incredibly stand-up guy. He is easygoing, but also no nonsense. In his text to my mother, he said, "I've never told anybody this before, and I probably won't again. The man in the hat the kids saw at the creek that night helped pick me up off the ground and put me back on my ATV and get me turned around. Until I heard that, I had always assumed that the shadow man was the one who was trying to scare us out of there, but thinking back on it, maybe he was the one whispering to us, telling us that we need to leave and possibly avoid something scarier and more dangerous, although I have no idea what could have been scarier than that." Though years have passed, the events of that night still echo through the memories of everyone who witnessed them, a chilling reminder that some places carry the weight of their tragedies long after the world has forgotten, and for the user the shadowed man by the ATV remains an enduring mystery, a threat, a warning, or perhaps a guardian in a place where far darker things linger. Tonight's second story comes from Reddit user u/viamocha, who shares a chilling late-night encounter inside their childhood home, an encounter that unfolded in the quiet hours when everyone was asleep and the house itself felt suspended in darkness. What began as a simple trip to the kitchen became a moment that would change the way they viewed their home forever, and the way they slept in it. To start off the story, I want to give a little bit of background. So last summer I had stumbled across Sam and Kobe's channel. This was kind of my start into all things paranormal. Besides Christian theology and beliefs, I ended up showing the channel to my close friends. Once I got to school, I remember me and my best friend getting high watching Sam and Kobe's Conjuring House series, all while on the edge of a wooden area. We even have messed around with an Ouija board. Don't worry, we took as many precautions as we could. Through all of this, it has shed some light on a few experiences that I've had. So it's safe to say that by the time I had the experiences I'm about to talk about it took quite a bit to actually terrify me. Also, one more thing I want to mention. I want to be as transparent and genuine as possible. I had had one shot right before this, so that being said, I had run out of a chaser and needed to grab something from the kitchen. It's at least 12 a.m. and at my parents' house, it's an unwritten rule that everyone stays in their room when they go to bed at 10. My room opens up to the living room, which is connected to the kitchen. There is also a stairway to the basement right in front of my door. Because all lights were off and I didn't want to wake my parents, I turned my light on and kept the door wide open, allowing me to see into the kitchen for the most part. I make my way to the sink because my parents don't ever have any sweet drinks, so I'm just filling a glass of water. There's a window right above the sink. As I'm filling the glass, I look up to it. Now remember, the only light is coming from behind me and I live on a street with no street lights. I couldn't see outside at all, but I see a black figure, resembling a man, walking out of the living room and turning to go down the stairs. I saw this in the reflection in the window. I was shitting my pants, but I quickly decided they weren't bothering me, nor were they bothered by me. They were minding their own business, so I'm going to go do the same. I put my head back down and finished filling my glass. When I returned to my room, I made sure to not look down the stairs. Ever since, I see things out of the corner of my eye in that house. I haven't been able to sleep in a dark room unless someone else is with me. Though time has passed and life has moved on, the memory of that shadowed figure remains. Even now, the user still catches fleeting movements in their peripheral vision and avoids sleeping in complete darkness. For the Reddit user, that night at the sink was more than just a frightening glimpse. It was a reminder that some presences don't need footsteps or voices to make themselves known. That wraps up episode 53, campers. If the air feels thinner, or your reflection lingers a heartbeat too long, don't stare back. Some thresholds are safest when ignored. Until next time, guard your flame.
As the night gets longer and the darkness creeps in, with the eerie silence broken only by whispering wind, come gather round the fire, the flickering flames, and hear the tales of the spooky and the strange. A chill up your back, a shiver up your spine. You'll be haunted by the things that you find. Legends will unfold and stories will be told at the scary campfire, for only